I think my colleague, the doctor from the 48th, nailed it, and I'm pretty much over it too. I started this term reaching out to some of my friends on the other side of the aisle. One in particular I have great admiration for, in the 105th, trying to find ways to find common ground on education, especially someone who understands, as a former DPS teacher, the impact on our classrooms, on our schools, statewide with children with special needs. Last term, I put forward a resolution to call on the U.S. government to properly fund special education. And I think the first person to sign it, and forgive me for protocol, I forget his district number, was former Rep. Tim Kelly. I'm hopeful to put that resolution again this year to address the shortfall that we are receiving in special education funding. But as lifted up by my colleague that spoke just before me, to have a $700 million shortfall with respect to special education is very disheartening. But we have to find a way to address the crises and close the gap on children with special learning needs, as well as those that are impacted by poverty. So I rise to speak to the proposed budget we have before us, which unfortunately preserves the status quo. I know that a great deal of time goes into the appropriations process. I couldn't imagine serving on any of those committees. And I really do applaud the members on the School Aid Fund Appropriations Committee for having the intestinal fortitude to work through this process. However, as many students are graduating this month, I'm left to wonder how many of you have actually congratulated students or bidded them farewell in their next steps in life. How many of you have actually taken time to attend graduations, open houses, or prom send-offs? As a former DPS teacher, it was an honor to address the 2019 class of Cass Technical High School, named after late statesman and governor Lewis Cass. We have a shortfall here that we're creating by not properly aligning our priorities. But I looked at those students in the audience on Tuesday, 570 graduates that overcame some very challenging circumstances to graduate, many of them with honors, garnering $65 million in scholarships. Yeah, Cass is a great school. Again, named after a late Governor Lewis Cass. It's great because of all the support they receive from the daily commitment of exemplary school leadership and staff that has worked with less for years, yet to do more. The commitment of their parents and the support from a stellar alumni and local business partners. But there are so many schools across our state that are not as fortunate. And the continued fighting and trying to find ways to make lemonade out of the lemons that we're throwing them is just wrong. Our attention will be in a few days at looking at the impact that we're even having on Benton Harbor School, their high school. But it's not just them. There are so many more across our state that if we don't truly get our priorities right, as reflected in this budget, we are causing the continual dismantling and underfunding of our schools. We have a statewide literacy crisis. And while the members in this process have been able to present us with a package to vote on, I'm afraid this budget still leaves a number of communities across the state powerless, without the tools to combat our ongoing literacy crisis, which will result in lower graduation rates. Well, so we bumped up a little this year and increased graduation. But if you look at the real data and look at college readiness, you'll find that we really haven't moved the needle very well at all. During a recent roundtable discussion I had with school finance expert Professor David Arson at MSU with his PhD cohort, the students struggled to understand if education is so critical, why is Michigan dead last in school revenue growth in the nation? I struggled to answer that question, and I told them that they need to tune in more often and watch the work of this body. In fact, according to the study that we pay for in this body, we are woefully underfunding education to the tune of $2,000 per student. Our refusal to see that our children with special needs and those impacted by poverty need additional resources, which should be reflected by weighted funding, is disheartening when we know it costs so much more to support the learning process of students with special needs and those impacted by poverty. I have to thank, though, my colleague from the 77th that put forth an amendment to address some of those disparities. As a former teacher, I know that children with special needs can certainly learn. My son graduated from Cass Technical High School with an IEP, and having that support, yes, he was able to learn, and many students receiving that support. But we know that we must give them more. More time was put into my child and other children with special needs. It demands more for resources, and our inability to see that and to address that really makes it problematic in making sure that all children are given a fighting chance. We can't continue to give lip service to Michigan citizens. Our priorities are indeed reflected on how we appropriate our state's dollars. We don't fix the roads on the backs of children while stashing cash to be utilized for corporate interests. We all thought it was cute earlier this year when the young student was outside with a shovel and a bucket trying to fix a hole in the road. But is that what we want? Do we want all of Michigan students to be out fixing holes in roads? Is that what we've come to as a state? In my closing, my heart leaped when I learned of all the educators that will be coming to this chamber from both sides of the aisle, because I know that educators truly in their heart of hearts want to do what is right for children. I believe in my heart of hearts, teachers that have taken the time to meet all of the demands of colleges of education and all the competencies understand research-based practices. All teachers who understand what it really truly takes and why some of them really have left the classroom to come here and try to fix it. Let us not assimilate now and decide that we will get on the side of whatever is necessary to advance an agenda that does not put children first. Let us remember, especially those of us who are educators, regardless of our party affiliation, let us remember our first love and why we chose to educate children, why we decided to go into a profession that certainly does not pay the worth that we work. Let us really decide to put our priorities first for Michigan children and not turn our backs on our children in this budget process. Let us really vote in defense of our children having a fighting chance. I know that we can do better than perpetuating this dismantling and defunding of public education. We can work together as statesmen and stateswomen to do what is right by properly allocating the needed funding to our children to learn. I'm asking my colleagues to vote no on this budget because it does not address the disparities that exist. In fact, it further continues to erode public education and any education, regardless of traditional public or public school academies. More money needs to be put into the classroom of our children, and we should not play these games, these divisive policies, after we've had such a love fest a few weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago. I dare not say where. But after the love fest, we should be able to find common ground to get to a place of making sure we work collaboratively and in a bipartisan manner to advance what is best for all Michigan children. That's voting no on this budget because it does not do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.